a second chance.
And with that, we are going to end the show where we began, talking about prisons. That was some more of the governor's trip to the newest Minnesota prison in Rush City. But our question tonight, is a new prison something to really be proud of? Does it show that the state is tough on crime or has too much crime to be tough on? And if we have too much crime, why? Tonight, we're going to welcome a man who has seen it from both sides, literally. He is a former inmate and now a prosecutor. Brian Pierce is an assistant county attorney in Cottonwood County who drove up all the way from Windham to be here. I want to thank you so much for coming down. I want to get your past out of the way so we don't have to harp on that all night. You've certainly been on the other side of the law. Talking years ago, you're into drugs, burglary, credit card fraud, spent time behind bars, and then you studied a lot. You passed the bar exam, and now you're an assistant prosecuting attorney. You've certainly turned your life around.
Thank you.
And as you looked at some of that tape, what kind of went on through your mind? Step in the right direction?
Well, certainly as far as facilities go, I assume it's a top-notch facility. There's no question Minnesota's Department of Correction is probably one of the finest in the country, if not the finest. It's operated well. So there's no question it's a fine facility. The only question is that how we want to spend our $89 million? And that's just the cost of construction. We're not talking about the $30 million a year to run that facility.
Okay. You think the amount just in itself is too much? Because, you know, we've lived in this period in Minnesota when people said, if we need jails, build them, build them, build them. We're still kind of in that mode.
Well, I think we're hopefully starting to slow down. The country, no doubt, has been in that mode. I believe since 1977 to 1995, Minnesota's growth in prisons grew by over 500%, while its growth in colleges and higher education only grew in somewhere in the neighborhood of 333%. So there's no question we've been building prisons. The only thing is what are we getting for that in the long run? I believe we're simply, right now, or at least in the past, we were getting simply incapacitation of offenders, which is not a good investment, in my opinion. Fortunately, the governor and Commissioner Voss have seemed to take rehabilitation and education of inmates very seriously, and they are pushing that. And
that's one of your big points, too. If you make a speech about this, you like to emphasize getting something out of the inmates while they're there, not just letting them sit. Explain that.
Well, that's true. I mean, I think the goal of the system, an inmate is a liability to society. They are costing us $20,000, $30,000 a year to house them and incarcerate them. Our goal should not only be to eliminate that expense, but to turn them into tax-paying citizens, to turn them into an asset. And I think we can do that through education.
All right, now one problem with education may be, you see, Minnesota does not require an inmate to learn anything. Is that true?
Well, apparently from what the governor just said, they are now requiring them to get a 10th grade education. And he said hopefully that will go up to GED level. Well, certainly at this point in 1999, it should be at GED level, and we should be looking at raising it even above that.
All right, so if you were to see another prison being worked on in Minnesota, would you speak out against it violently, kind of, where you say, hey, we got to stop doing this?
Most definitely. I mean, building prisons is a shame because you very rarely see one closed down. Once you build it, you figure it's going to be filled up in a relatively short period of time, and it'll stay that way for as long as any of us can remember.
All right, so how do you handle this mindset that I was talking about earlier, where people are saying, if we do have crime, and even if we don't, we've got to be prepared for the next time crime may go up. And this way, at least you have it in place. You don't have to worry about spending maybe $300 million 5 years down the line. You don't buy that?
No, I don't buy that at all. What happens when you build a prison is it gets filled up. You can't build one today and think, well, we're going to have plenty of room for the future, because it's amazing how fast it'll be filled up.
All right, and so where should we go? If we don't build more prisons, what would you like to see? I mean, because some people will say if you go to certain counties in Minnesota, you've got overcrowding, or you have jails where people are renting out space to another location. Well, how do we fix this?
Of course, that's county jails, and those inmates cannot serve time in a prison. A prison inmate is for a convicted inmate serving a year or more. I think we could seriously take a look at making our prisons more effective and then reducing the sentences. Inmates in Minnesota serve more time than they do in just about any other state in the country. Our sentences are very lengthy. If we made the time more effective, got them ready to get out and function in society, I believe we could reduce the sentences dramatically, and we'd have plenty of bed space available.
All right, I notice you haven't talked about so far prevention and intervention. Are you as cynical as I am and say, well, a lot of times people just say that because it sounds great?
Well, I think those are all good and important things, and if we started to minimize our use of incarceration, especially lengthy incarceration, we may have the money to do that. Unfortunately, we're spending all that money on prisons incapacitating, and we just don't have the money to put it into the schools.
All right. Okay, because some would be under the impression that you can try all the prevention you want. There are basically, and you would agree with this, there are some people who are either in Minnesota or coming to Minnesota who are just plain and simple bad people, and they're going to end up in prison at some point in time.
Oh, I think there's no question that's true. There's always going to be a percentage of people who need to be incapacitated, and some need to be incapacitated for life.
All right, Brian Pierce, thank you so much for driving down.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate it. And we're going to say goodbye. We'll see you all tomorrow.